Welcome, Legionnaires, to the Long Live the Legion podcast, where we talk about the Legion of Superheroes comic book team from the future, and we break those subjects down so that whether you're just out of the Legion Academy or you're a longtime veteran, you get to know the team a little bit better. I'm your co-host, Jim.
And I'm your co-host, Jay.
All right, and welcome to episode number 4. What do we have on the mission monitor board for today, Jay?
Thanks for asking. Today, we are talking more Saturn Girl. We realized that after last episode, we didn't talk enough about her because, and I think most Legion fans can agree, she's one of the most important members and we love talking about her. So we're going to talk about her relationships, her friendships, her romantic connections. And the reason why we wanted to do this is because, and I'll speak for myself here, and Jim, you can chime in and agree or disagree. I think these relationships are what make these comics work as well as they do. Without the friendships, without the romantic side of it, we don't care. We don't care about what's going on. And I think her relationships really help describe who this character is.
Exactly. Every team, even a solo comic book, a Superman, a Batman, what have you, they have a supporting cast. It's not just the hero and the villain and they duke it out. Sometimes they do, but in most cases, they have a supporting cast, and that's where a lot of the humanity and connection with the readers really lies, because you see that they have relationships that remind you that they're actual people, right? That they have the same kind of drives and emotions and relationships that everybody else does. Before we get into that, we did want to actually take a mention. So as we're recording this, and this is early March in 2025, Superman 23 of the current run just dropped this week. And pretty amazing, we actually have a real live Legion reference in the comic book.
No, I was stunned that they did this. I was not expecting it in the slightest. It's a great look. I mean, look, getting Dan Mora to draw the Legion is, you know, it's not going to go wrong no matter what he does. I mean, I got to be honest, I came into his work really late, and now everything I see, I'm just like, this guy just amazes me. He's given us 3 Legionnaires at the end of issue 23. What's great about it is that, it's the Legion, it's the I want to say the Trinity of the Legion. It's the first 3, but yet they're not in costume. They don't have anything that would make you say Legion, but just, it's obvious. It's Lightning Lad, it's Cosmic Boy, it's Saturn Girl. I think they're being drawn a little bit older, so I'm going to speculate that we're going to see maybe the adult Legion, but I'm excited. Like, this is great. I was certain we were going to have to wait a long time, and it looks like we're only going to have to wait to the summer, which is better than expected.
Yeah, and this is when we talked about Saturn Girl last episode. I did mention this because this was one of your questions: was where do you want to see these characters again, or do you want to see Saturn Girl again specifically? And we did mention the all-in appearance of the Dark Side Legion, and we saw all of them, including these 3. Or all, not all of the Legion, but all of the ones represented in this particular version. And I guess we're referring to them as the Absolute Legion because this is the absolute line of the comics from the All-In universe. However that's working, I don't know. I'm enjoying a lot of these books right now. But and to your point, I absolutely love Dan Mora, especially as part of the World's Finest title that's been going on for the last few years. Just amazing stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited to see this. The only problem is we have to wait until the summertime. So that's, at least May or June or July, however you want to define it. So it's a little bit of a tease, but we still have to wait. But that means we're going to definitely see something, which I think is a cool thing to happen.
Yeah, I'm being cautiously optimistic about this. Like, 1, I love seeing them, but 2, as soon as I see them as villains, then my fear is, like, DC has this habit of just using them as cannon fodder. And I always have this fear that we're going to just see them as like, okay, here are the bad guys, and then the Justice League wipe them out. And in a perfect world, and I'm going to cross my fingers this happens, we're going to get the evil Legion and we're going to get the good Legion, and it's actually going to be this gigantic moment. So yeah, I'm hoping for the best, but maybe all the reboots have just beaten me down to the point where I'm assuming it's going to be something bad. I hope not. I got to stay positive on this, but yeah, it's great to see. Like, it's just so nice to see them pop up, and in a book that's selling, in a book that the fans care about, and you hope that translates into something else.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully we'll get a chance to maybe even talk about it in real time. That's kind of exciting.
Exactly.
All right. So let's jump in. Jump back into talking about Saturn Girl and her relationships here, because I know we started talking about doing the whole breakdown of the character, and we talked about all these other things last time about Saturn Girl, but like as you pointed out, there's all these relationships that kind of help define her. I don't want this to be like this weird Bechtel test of an episode where we're always talking about her in relationship with, other guys or whatever, um, because her relationship spans just, not just from a romantic perspective with some of the male team members, but she has platonic relationships with a lot of the other really close, especially the older founder Legionnaires, uh, as well as her female Legionnaire colleagues as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a great point on the Bechtel test thing. I was actually thinking that myself of like, and it's always horrible when when you get stuck to finding a female character based on the men in her life. So let's start with the friendships, and actually not even the friendships, but the connections she has. So always found it interesting. One of Saturn Girl's most interesting relationships was with Lightning Lass, because this is the twin sister of her husband or boyfriend, depending on what you're reading. And it was always this very interesting connection of they were friends, but always sort of I always viewed it as a little bit distant. So what was your take on that?
Yeah, I did as well, because there was, I guess, well, to define the relationship, we can talk a little bit about the history, right? So, Lightning Lass slash Light Lass, depending on when you're talking about her in the history, right? She's Garth Ranz's twin sister, and she came about because she was essentially pretending to be her brother, who had died, and so yeah, and then of course he comes back, and then but they wanted to keep her around, so she's Lightning Lass on the team, and so she started this. She became into Saturn Girl's sphere, uh, trying to pretend to be Garth. So I think that is, when I don't know if you can read that much into it from a Silver Age perspective, but that is kind of an interesting thing, right? If uh, over time, Garth and Imra kind of became boyfriend girlfriend, and you have this weird thing about your twin, your female twin is kind of known to be, she was pretending to be you from a Garth perspective, and I don't know, it's just a little bit kind of strange, right? But then over time, other weird things started happening too, right? So I guess the other incident that really kind of comes to my mind is that incident up in Legion 289, which is the famous cold and dark, lonely corner of hell, uh, where Saturn Girl and Timberwolf and Shrinking Violet and Colossal Boy are stuck on a frozen asteroid, and uh, Bryn and Imra start to confide in each other about certain things, and at the end they share a hug, and then right at that moment, Dawnstar and Ayla come flying in, and basically she takes the exact wrong interpretation of the scene, and it ends up kind of leading to a breakup of Lightning Lass and Bryn. So a little bit of a weird tension there, I thought.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That was something I was going to comment on as well. It's a really interesting comic, and it's a really interesting dynamic, and we'll talk about it more later when we talk about her and Garth. But it's one of those moments where they were toying with kind of causing trouble between Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad, and it ended up going in the exact opposite direction, where it breaks up this longtime pairing that I think for most Legion fans, I mean, Light Lass, well, at the time she's Light Lass, and Timberwolf had been together for 15 years, I think, by that point. Um, and that's the breakup. And the way the comic's written is like you said, they have a hug. I mean, the book is written to kind of make it a little bit more ambiguous. Like maybe it's a little bit more, or maybe it isn't. And then there's one moment where Imra actually says, "I looked into her mind and I saw that she loved Bryn more than I loved my husband." And it's a really weird relationship, and there's always been this little bit of tension between the two of them, and that one just kind of broke everything apart. Um, I think it would have been nice to see them have a moment after that, and they never did. But
Yeah.
it was a really dramatic moment because I think it made Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad get closer afterwards because I think she realized what she was going to lose, and it set Light Lass off on this great self discovery that ended up with her going from sort of one of the weakest members of the team to a leader and someone with a lot of strength.
Yeah, yeah, and then exactly, great points for all of that, and then when we also talk about the post zero hour version of the character, right, there was also a little bit of tension in that same relationship between the two characters as well. So when they go into the 20th century, and we'll get into this a little bit more with Cosmic Boy, there was a moment where Ayla and was a little bit at odds with Imra about kind of the romantic relationship that was building up between the two of them. And then later on, in that same iteration of the Legion, after Abnett and Lanning take over and they go into the Legion title, there's a little bit of weird tension there, or not necessarily tension, but they actually kind of seem to kind of find common cause. Because at that point in the version of the Legion, the Lightning Lad is dead, or Livewire in this version is dead, and they have kind of common cause in trying to maybe address the people that might have killed him, or how he died in that environment. It's kind of a very interesting dynamic that they'd set up in that version of the Legion too.
I did really enjoy kind of the overprotective Ayla at that point, like where it was like, hey, don't mess up my brother and don't do this because again, like I say, I think for most of the Silver Age and even into a lot of the Bronze Age, she was really they didn't do much with Ayla, and then every time they pushed it a little bit further, it always worked really well, and I thought that was a really interesting uh, really interesting moments because it was fairly true. Like, hey, I thought you were in love with my brother, and now you're with this other guy. What's wrong with you? And then after Garth's dead, then it's what do we do to move forward, or how do we find a peace with that? And
Yeah.
I think that's been an interesting thing with Saturn Girl and a lot of the I shouldn't say a lot, but with some female characters. Like you could say the same thing with Phantom Girl. The tension has been there, right? Like there's been this, they've kind of been at odds with each other from a personality level, and it makes both characters richer as they're progressing with it.
For sure. I mean, and we'll get into we actually got some mail this week, so we'll get into this later. But Marty Gray actually sent us an email addressing the Ice Maiden comment about Saturn Girl specifically, and it was kind of a interesting moment. so, so there's this issue from Legion of Superheroes 274. And this is in the midst of the Reflecto saga, for those of you who are familiar with that run of the Legion. And in this particular part of the story, everybody thinks Ultra Boy is dead, who is obviously Phantom Girl's boyfriend, and she's losing it, and she kind of freaks out at Imra and calls her an Ice Queen, and how she could never really love anybody like she could. And there's this look that uh, Imra has on her face, where she looks like stunned that anybody could talk to her like that. It just the way that it's colored with her eyes, kind of makes it look like she's stunned. And I had a good laugh over that. So thank you, Marty, for sending that those frames. It's just amazing stuff. But to that point, right, in this part of the story, Tinya calls Imra an Ice Maiden, but then as part of this, Imra understands that Tinya's really hurting, right? Because she's definitely in love with Joe, and she does what she can to take Tinya's pain away, right? And so stepping up as that leadership figure, even though this girl is is kind of being spoiled and bratty and throwing stuff at her that she doesn't necessarily really deserve, she's still empathetic and reaches out to help her out.
And actually, further on through the Reflecto story, so just for all the listeners, and this is maybe a warning or maybe this is something to look forward to. We will be deep diving on the Reflecto saga at some point in all of its glory. there's a point where, so they all think that Ultra Boy's dead, but he's actually living with a bunch of pirates. They go and attack the pirate house, or the pirate, I want to say cave, but that's not it. And Imra thinks she's sensing Ultra Boy again, and then they think he's died again. And so she's so hopeful, she's so excited, she wants to tell Tinya, but then she's like, okay, I can't tell you because I don't want to break your heart again. And she keeps it a secret. And it's kind of funny, like, there's all these moments, I think, in Imra's character where she makes these choices thinking she's doing the best, but it's actually probably not the right choice, but she's trying to protect her team. I mean, look, it's melodrama at its highest, but I just think, like, it's kind of funny. You're laughing at the googly eyes that she gets when she gets stunned. I keep thinking of, like, she thinks it's Ultra Boy, and tears are streaming down her face in these wide, like, it's the way it's drawn. It's like, you think, like, she's just so happy, she's bawling, and you're like, okay, what? And again, it's just over the top, but it's comics from the late 70s, early 80s.
I'm just still not happy that we have to read this again. So anyway, let's move on. Moving on. So let's talk about, we talked about Dream Girl as well last episode, or not last episode, but when we covered the Universo project a couple of episodes ago. I wanted to make sure that we mentioned this again because Dream Girl is another character who is, they're kind of, as different as can be, right? These two characters, they're about the only thing that's in common is that they're both blonde. Right, and they both have these interesting mental powers. Nora can see into the future. Imra can read people's minds. Right, so both these interesting mental powers. They've both also been leaders of the Legion, and that kind of gives them an interesting perspective on things in general. Right, so not only do they have this. They're just wildly different from a personality perspective, right? Dream Girl is very flirty and very open and all that stuff, whereas Imra as a telepath is, really, a lot more reserved, not withdrawn, not, super introverted or anything like that, but just more reserved, and kind of not quite as outgoing. So there's, they're not the same kind of personality types, but they recognize, game recognizes game, as they say, right?
I will actually say there's two more things they have in common, aside from being
go for it.
I agree with the assessment in the Universo project that they're two of the smartest Legionnaires, and I think you can argue they're the two smartest female Legionnaires. And I'd be hard pressed to pick somebody who would knock either of them off the list, because I think we all forget, like, as crazy as this is, and like, we have to embrace the insanity of the Silver Age. Dream Girl's first appearances are basically like, hey, I'm going to do something that switches Lightning Lass's power to Light Lass. And, like, she's smart enough to figure all of this out. And then everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, she's a ditz, or she's this. And you're like, wait. She did something that, like, nobody else in this team has even contemplated doing. And the second one that I'm going to go back to the same first appearance of Dream Girl, and I think it carries on a little bit. She's willing to do whatever it takes to protect the team, even if people don't like her for it. And I think Saturn Girl has the exact same personality. And again, Dream Girl's first appearance, she comes in and basically uses the Legion Constitution to shut everybody down, to save them from something bad happening, because she foresaw them being destroyed. And she doesn't care that everybody hates her. She's like, I'm going to save these people, and save people that she doesn't know at this point. So it's always funny with her, like, everybody's so quick to immediately dismiss her, but yet I think she's got so many elements that are similar to Imra on this, and I think that's why they have this shared connection, right? It's just this. Yeah. You said game recognizes game, and I think it is. I mean, I think when Dream Girl's written well, she's one of the most formidable Legionnaires, and Saturn Girl's in the same boat. I think of that 3-boot episode, or the 3-boot issue that I just reviewed, where she's basically saying, here's what you're going to do, here's what you're going to do, and I can beat you in every fight. And that's we're using her in the right. And you can see, and then Saturn Girl, like 2 issues later, like, I'm going to go into your mind and shut down your powers.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, these women are tough. These women don't mess around. And that's what I think is the connection. Another really good relationship that I wanted to bring up was Saturn Girl's relationship with Element Lad. Right from the very beginning, she's the one that he goes to and says, "Hey, don't tell anybody where I'm from. Don't tell anybody my superpowers." And she goes to the Legion and says, "Hey, make this guy a Legionnaire. I'm not going to tell you anything. Just trust me." And the entire team says, "Cool, good." And then she does the exact same thing decades later with Sensor Girl. And
Right.
so she's kind of like, so she's shown like she's the one that you can trust above everybody else, and she will protect you no matter what. And she and Element Lad, especially as leaders and people who love the team and have basically given their life to the team, there's that great connection there. And I think when they played off those similar, very shy, kind of withdrawn personalities, I think that those two really had that great connection there, and it was it was two great characters for them to play off.
So let's transition a little bit and between the platonic and the romantic, and to do that, I want to transition over to Cosmic Boy, because I think he's a good example or a good character to talk to in this respect, because for the vast majority of the Legion's history, he's absolutely a platonic, close, almost best friend of Imra, just because of the fact that he's one of the original founders, right? It's Imra, Rock, and Garth are the founders of the Legion. So by extension, they have a deep relationship and trust of each other. And I think for the vast majority of the Legion's history, they've definitely had that same kind of it's like the two class presidents, right? They're like the co-presidents of the high school class. They've been around for forever. They're the smartest. They have the leadership qualities, all that good stuff. And so they're thought of kind of in the same in that same manner, I think, throughout the Legion history.
I agree. But yeah, I mean, when we think of them, it's kind of funny because when I was thinking about like the different relationships, my mind didn't immediately go to Cosmic Boy as a romantic figure, because I've always seen them as this, as this platonic connection. But then it, post 0 Hour, and then where else did they do it?
In the I guess the weird retro brute adventure comics time frame in the around 2010.
So what's funny about it is, in post 0 Hour, there were moments as I was reading it, and all I was thinking was, these two make more sense than Imra and Garth. Like, the writers just did a better job building chemistry. And it was kind of funny because your brain kept saying, nope, this is wrong, because it's not, she's supposed to be with Garth. But then from a writing standpoint, you said, well, this makes more sense. Like, these two actually have something in common.
And I think we'll get into this, I think, a little bit later when we talk about Garth himself. But I think what we need to figure out is, what is that sweet spot to be able to do that? Because there was a weird thing from the mid 90s on, they've had this weird thing about I mean the writers and the creators at DC have had this weird thing about wanting to shake up Imra, Saturn Girl specifically, her relationships at a romantic level, so that eventually they seem to say that she gets to Garth Rands as her mate and her boyfriend, but along the way she has all these different stops, which I guess is fine, right? I mean, it's certainly a normal human journey, right? But when we talk about established characters, it does have a little bit of a dissonance there, because you're expecting, like you said, one thing, but if it's written in a way that seems forced, you don't really appreciate it quite as much, where you would appreciate it if it's kind of grown naturally, where it kind of did seem that to be that way in the reboot, for sure.
So, I mean, we've kind of opened a gigantic can of worms discussion wise, right? And so I don't know if we want to dive into the worms, so to speak.
Let's dive into the worm.
All right, perfect. So when we talk about Saturn Girl at the romantic level, like, obviously, like, writing romance in the Silver Age is, hey, these two people are together, done, and then we don't have to go, like, there doesn't have to be any more depth to that, because you're writing for a 10-year-old, right? So there's the idea of, like, I think of those, again, to go back to Phantom Girl, those moments of, like, I think Ultra Boy's cute, and then that was it, that was all you needed, right? And he was just like, okay, sounds good.
Well, honestly, let's be honest. That's probably what he was thinking anyway. So
Yeah, so it's yeah. And so in her case, like, you know, you're dealing with that history of like, okay, if you're a longtime Legion fan, you know all of this. And then in the 90s, they said we have to have drama. Like, and what's the best way to have drama on a romantic side is you set up obstacles, right? And I've always said this, and this is going to be a little bit of a rant on especially writing this sort of like a triangle or this sort of a problem, is you have to give the readers a reason why she'd be with both people. And where so many stories fail and so many, and I'm not just talking comics, movies, TV shows, everything, is they'll give you a reason why one person makes sense, but they'll never give you the reason about why the other person makes sense. That was my problem with Post Zero Hour, was that they were like, here's this triangle, yet they did a really, really bad job of showing why Arth and Imra should be together. And so you, as you're reading, you're going, yeah, Cosmic Boy, like this just makes sense. And I was actually kind of thinking like, yeah, this would be cool if you just threw this out. Like if you just said, you know what, we're going to pivot and go here. We know that everybody thinks that this old stuff was going to happen. And I think maybe that's what they were trying to do with Ultra Boy, of just, hey, we're going to show you this different thing and we're going to pivot and we're going to go in a different direction. But you have to earn it. Like there has to be a reason, right?
Right, and I think and where this gets, I guess, problematic to me, in some ways, is there's the other issue, right? The other episode, and we talked a little bit about this. So this is Adventure 517 from 2010, written by Paul Levitz, who you think would know better on this particular topic, but effectively the end result is that the three original Legionnaires go and have they solve a crime. I can't remember the specific crime, but anyway, they end up partying the night away afterwards, and a drunk Rock and Imra go back and sleep together. Fine, happens, right? This kind of thing happens all the time, right? But then what happens is Imra wakes up, she's realizes what she did, and she's like, oh my god, I can't believe I did this, and she wipes Rock's mind of whatever happened, of everything that happened. So that's not a good look, right, when we're trying to be kind of a hero. And I don't know, that just rubbed me the wrong way. And it was I think where this kind of bothered me, and where I, both for the Rock situation and the Ultra Boy situation that we're going to be talking about here in a minute, had this weird trope of the alpha male, right? Where you have, Imra is the alpha female, quote unquote, of the team, and Rock is the alpha male, and then Ultra Boy, of course, you can also make that same argument about him. So of course, they have to be together. They have to sleep together, or whatever it is. And I don't know. I just kind of, that just rubbed me the wrong way, because it's a trope that I just don't think you need to use in a comic. I mean, it's just, so what? It just I don't know if bother is the right word. I guess it did bother me a little bit, because I'm talking about this, but it's just a weird choice, I guess, at the end of the day.
I think why it bothers you, and I think why a lot of this bothers me, is that, and we talked about this last episode, there's an image of who she is, right? And if she's doing things that match her character, I would say that makes sense. Like, and so even when characters make mistakes, if it's something that they would do, and you go, yep, I understand that. Like that's a, you can say it's not logical, but they're drunk and emotions take over. But the moment that they break from what their character is, I think that's where you start having problems. And so in the case of Saturn Girl, she's always been written as this very highly moral, highly ethical character. And then when she starts doing things that are neither, and in this case, she's done two things that are neither. She's now slept with Cosmic Boy, and then she erases his memory of it. And in both cases, you're like, this isn't who she is. This is immoral. This is unethical. And you say, like, and then it just doesn't work, right? It's the same, like when she hooks up with Ultra Boy, it makes sense from Ultra Boy's standpoint, because he's literally trying to be with every girl on the team. So like, that's not, it matches him. So you're not really mad at him. You're actually mad at her for falling for it because you go, she should know better. Her character should be smarter than this.
Yeah, and especially, and this is in the three boot specifically, and this is after he calls her things like dumpy and just these just kind of horrible things, right? And let's be honest, in that version of the Legion, there's not that many good characters to really root for, and Ultra Boy's version in this version of the Legion is probably at the bottom of the list of anybody to root for from a heroic character perspective. Um, but Ultra Boy is the other character that uh, since Abnett and Lanning took over the Legion anyway, there has been a very that 10-year span from about 2000 to 2010, there was this really weird obsession about pairing the two of them up together in a couple in a couple scenarios, and I just kind of scratched my head on that, right? So, and partially, and I think you're exactly right about why these things are kind of rubbing me the wrong way, because they're just not how I would expect that character to be, and that's fine. I mean, a writer can make their decisions on their stories, but if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. And in the case of the Ultra Boy connections, right, the first one came about in the Legion Lost, the classic Legion Lost miniseries, right, where among the group of stranded Legionnaires, you have Ultra Boy, who is in this weird codependent relationship with Apparition or Tinya in the reboot, and so he's very much obsessed over her. And Saturn Girl is in part of this group too. And so, spoilers for people who haven't read Legion Lost. If you haven't, shame on you. He basically creates a mental projection version of Tinya for the entire team there. See, so effectively what she's doing is invading everybody's mind for all intents and purposes by projecting this mental image. Let's, we can discuss, we can probably have a whole separate episode about the feasibility of that kind of a concept in a plot, but whatever. And so effectively, she's kind of in his head, and to some extent puppeteering him, right, from an emotional level, which is again not something that we'd expect her to do. And to make a finer point on this particular topic, it's the second time this had happened, because earlier in the reboot, she had gone crazy mentally and was saying, I'm never going to be doing this kind of thing to my teammates again. And when she has that moment where she's almost going to be marrying Cosmic Boy, it turns out that she's been mentally puppeteering him too. And so you'd think that lesson would have been learned, but it was not. And so it's all of these aspects are about Saturn Girl just don't line up with the character who she's defined as. And is on one hand, you can make the argument that makes good drama. On the other hand, it's very dissonant with what you're used to from a character.
Yeah, you want characters to change. You obviously want characters to grow. You want characters to do things. But I always kind of put it as like, at their core, the characters have this center to them, and it doesn't matter what character it is. Like, she's making choices that just don't fit her core personality, and it kind of fails. It's funny when you bring up Legion Lost and we talk about like payoffs working because of how the story went. Like, to me, after Legion Lost, if you had them come back and had both Saturn Girl and Ultra Boy go, hey, we just spent a year in each other's minds. I've realized I have a better connection with you than I do with my partner. Let's get together. You've now, like, that now makes sense. Like, you could say, like Ultra Boy could say, this last year when I thought you were Phantom Girl, that's the best year I've ever had. We connected so closely. I want to be with you. And instead they went, nope. We're just throwing that out. And that's what I like. You have to build these things up. You have to make these things make sense. And when you just throw them out, it just kind of goes boom, right?
Yeah. Well, it's two ways, right? It's both ways. If you bring it up and but don't bother to build the groundwork for it, right? Kind of like the reboot relationship with Garth, you scratch your head. And similarly, if you build something up to the point where you should make some kind of issue of this, but then toss it out, that's also kind of a waste of of emotion, of writing, of reading time, of all that stuff.
Exactly. I mean, just think about what the Legion would have looked like if you have Imra dealing with Garth's death, plus dealing with her feelings for Joe, Joe dealing with his, and then Tinya coming back with Timberwolf, with the baby. Like, you have story upon story of drama that you can play with and you can have some fun with. And instead they just had like, nope, like, we don't care. Like, it just doesn't, we're just going to go away from this. I thought it was a real failed opportunity for them to have some fun. And then, of course, when Garth comes back, there's that next step. Like, there could have been so much there, but instead they were just like, let's blow up another planet. And you're like, come on, like,
hey, planets are cheap.
Yeah. It's easy. We can kill millions of people and it's more drama. And see, and to me, that's actually kind of the funny thing. And it brings this whole, why we're having this conversation together is like, we care more about this little stuff between these three people than we do when they say, hey, we've just sucked out 40% of the dark matter of the universe. And we go, like, who cares? But hey, these two people, like, and that shows you like why this matters. Okay. I think we have to get to the most important relationship. And I think we've gone on way too long about everything, but again, I think this is a sign that we could talk about this for so long, and but we have to talk about Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad. And so when we decided we were going to talk about this, the first thing that went to my head is this one of those relationships in comic books that is, and sacred is the wrong word, but is something that you just don't mess around with. So I was trying to think of like in comic books, like you think of, and I'll throw out a few, and I'm sure you've got a few examples. Like I think of like Lois and Clark. Like if a comic book writer was to come on and say, hey, I'm going to divorce them, like they're going to get divorced, and one's going to go with here, and like she's going to start dating Steve Lombardi or something, like DC would immediately say, get out. And I think we're at the same place, like, Sue Storm and Reed Richards, Peter Parker and Mary Jane. Any other that come to mind?
Ralph and Sue Dibney come just straight up to my mind.
Yep. Green Arrow, Black Canary.
Yep.
Right. I'm gonna go one that I think is true as well. Apollo and Midnighter. I don't think you can split them up. I think they're it's just that perfect couple. And I was thinking, are Garth and Imra in that category? And the more I think about Legion history, the more I think that they are.
I agree.
If you look back through the Legion books, when the Legion is at their best, they're together.
I mean, let's put it this way. DC went out of their way to publish a very special issue that was about their wedding, right? You don't do that for characters you don't care about. I don't think even Duo Damsel and Bouncing Boy had as big of an issue. I mean, they had a nice issue, right, when they had their wedding, but it wasn't this this big specially printed event, right? So I completely agree with you. I think this is, when we were talking about this or just talking about having this discussion, this was one of the things that I was thinking of, because we're talking, we just spent a good 15 minutes here talking about how DC has kind of tried to mix it up a little bit with the relationships that Saturn Girl has specifically, and none of them ever work. And I think the reason why is even the writers of these relationships understand that. They understand that if you mess with certain characters' relationships, no matter the version, it's touching a third rail, right? And if you try it, good luck. I mean, I think this is one of those things where you just can't do it without having it blow up in your face, either from a sales or a reaction of the fans or whatever what have you on that. It's just it's a very fraught thing to do, because you just don't know how it's going to turn up.
Yeah, I think it's the only way that this works is if one of them is dead and they're staying dead. And in comics, nobody stays dead.
Nope.
I think of one example that immediately came to mind, and not just for the powers, but like the Cyclops Jean Grey, which like when I was a kid, that was a relationship written in stone. And then even when they killed Phoenix, his next relationship is a woman who looks exactly like Jean Grey.
Right.
And the only way that it made sense for him to move on was when she was like really, really dead. Again, comic really, really dead. And then they could put Emma Frost in there. And then they made that changes because the fans were like, nope, 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 nope. And I think it's
Yeah.
the same with this, is that I think when they introduce this, every fan immediately goes, this is not right. This doesn't work. And I think DC has to just accept it. Like, oh yeah, this is the I mean, I don't think it's at Lois and Clark level, but I think it's obviously at Green Arrow and Black Canary level. Like,
Yeah.
like
I mean, sure. I think they, I'm sure one of our listeners will be able to tell us for sure, but um, the pairing of these two as boyfriend girlfriend of Garth Rands and Emma Ardeen has definitely been since the '60s, right? And that we're talking 50 years of kind of an established thing, right? I mean, and to your point about Lois and Clark specifically, they didn't even officially get them together until the late '80s, right? And late '80s, early '90s, um, in the comics world, and but still, right? I mean, at least officially, there were, I guess, prior Silver and Golden Age versions that they did, but um, it's one of those scenarios where it's like even if some of these haven't been officially set in stone from they're definitely dating kind of perspective, it's just things you don't mess with. I don't know. It'd be awesome to find out what other people think about this particular subject.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I agree, and it's kind of funny. Like when you think about all the different Legion relationships and which couples are you don't mess with. This is the first one that comes to mind. You mentioned it. You mentioned the big special they gave them in the '70s, which on the one hand was not a good story, but it was a good looking story. Like Mike Grell did an amazing job on it. Oh, I'm jealous. Sorry, just so everybody who knows, Jim just held up his copy of it. Um,
This is the hardcover that they released a couple years ago when they re-released. So yeah. Anyway,
nice, nice. I've been looking for the original to see if I can find it on eBay, and then I look at the price and I go, yeah,
good
no.
luck.
But then the other one I always kind of go with is think of the way Abnett and Landing ended their run on the Legion. The last thing they did was they put the two of them back together. Right?
Yeah.
Even though it's like Lightning Lad in Jan Era's body, but it was still, we understand that for all the damage that we've done and everything that's been broken and all the stuff, we know that the fans want to see this. And I think anybody who takes over the Legion now, I think anybody who's going to write it has to just lean into that and say, okay, this is the have you ever? I'm gonna go to a completely different medium. Have you ever heard those stories about how on The Office, in the last two seasons of The Office, they were trying to break up Jim and Pam for a little bit?
No.
So the story is that the writers were like, we want to do something interesting, and they had Jim could have possibly cheated or Pam could have possibly cheated, and in both cases, the actors we're like, nope, nope, nope. We're not filming this. We're not doing it. We understand what's going on. If we do this, the fans are going to kill us. And so it never happened. And I think that's how this has to be approached. Like at this point, you said, look, you've tried, you've done this. In every case, it didn't work. In every case, it was a mistake. Like there's no part of Legion history where you can say, oh yes, we successfully had Saturn Girl date, say for example, Superboy in the Bendis run. And nobody looks at that and goes, what a great idea. Like they go, that was horrible and please don't do that again. So let's just lean into it. So I would say this, if you want to understand this relationship, if you want to understand the Lightning Lad, Saturn Girl connection, I think actually the book you just held up, the marriage issue, as much as I don't think it's a great one, it really gets into why they're together. Earth War is a great bit of that.
Absolutely.
A lot of the subplots around Great Darkness Saga when she's trying to save him from he's got some sort of mind disease. Once they're married with kids, I will just say this: don't read volume 4 because it just ruins everything and you'll get pissed off. And any longtime Legion fan will understand why. And I'm not going to get into it today. Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get into that on some other episode.
we will. We've gone too long as it is, and I could go for half an hour on why it was horrible. It's a when they do this and when they respect it, it's this great arc of series, and yeah, it's one of the positive aspects of the book. I mean, we love the book because it's so positive, and to see this positive relationship between these two people who've been together since they were teenagers, it might not be realistic and it might not be dramatic, but it's what you want to see.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in the case of the Legion especially, but I think in pretty much every comic book where you have a large supporting cast, it's always fun to have the day off issues or the downtime issues, just because you get to see some of that interplay. It's not just good guy smash bad guy kind of thing, and it's what we love reading. We love reading about those relationships, and to some extent the soap opera, right? That's kind of part of the magic. Great. So, Jay, this has been awesome. So let's talk about our mailbag. So, first of all, I think we'd love to just say thank you to those of you who have started to listen to the podcast. This is obviously something very, very new to us, and so we're still kind of feeling our way through this. But we're just grateful to have all you guys that are Legion fans, and hopefully folks that are new to the Legion tuning in and listening. It's just wonderful to have you along the board. So, feel free to reach out and kind of contact us if you have any questions, suggestions, whatever. You can get to us at longlivethellegion2025@gmail.com. And you can do that just like Marty Gray did. So, Marty, who is a lot of you might know from the dangermart.blog, for the Too Dangerous for a Girl comic book blog, where he has weekly reviews for new releases and things like that. It's a great blog to read. If you don't have it bookmarked already, I'd say go ahead and just do that. So I mentioned earlier he emailed us about which was it, Legion 274, I think. That was just so funny. But anyway, he had a good comment here, so I wanted to among many things that he wrote here, I wanted to kind of call this out because this is very specifically Legion related and Legion art related. So he says, apologies if I'm wrong, but I think you forgot to mention the amazing covers by Steve Lightle. I'm not convinced interior penciler Greg LaRocque could entirely blame his inkers for any failings in his published art. Lots of his images looked very good, but at times his figures were often a tad wonky, regardless of finisher. And I speak as a fan of his work here and in The Flash. Marty, that's a great point. I mean, Steve is just a classic Legion drawer, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I really he's one of the ones that I really enjoy looking at the art for anything that he does, really. So thank you for mentioning that one.
Yeah, I as soon as I saw the email, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we forgot, and I'm pretty sure we shouldn't have, because, and we'll talk about this more when we start talking about, like the Pantheon and the best Legion artists of all time. And Steve Lightle, I mean, this is going to show my age and how I was buying every DC comic at the time. I remember when he popped up on Doom Patrol, and I was going, wow, this is a horrible book, but this art is so good. And his work on the Legion is top notch across the board. And so, yeah, all I can say is, yeah, I'm sorry that we missed that, because we shouldn't have. Those covers were amazing, and they set the tone of that story so well.
And then you can also get in touch with us on the socials. So we are at longlivethelegion.bsky.social. So you can check us out on Blue Sky, just like Alan Williams did. And if you all don't know Alan, he is one of the folks on the Legion of Substitute podcasters. So it's the weekly podcast that's going through all the different Legion issues. I think they're in the middle of the reboot right now, somewhere in the 20th century storyline. So definitely give them a listen if you're not already. And Alan says, enjoying this so far, but just so you know, the relationship between Ron Vidar and Universo was established with their first appearance in Adventure Comics 349. And that is absolutely right, Alan. Thank you for pointing that out. It's a great issue, actually. When you mentioned the issue, I went back and looked at it and kind of read through it, and I really, it's smack dab in the middle of the Silver Age, but and so it has that age to it. But it's just I thought it was a fun read, so it was good. Thank you for for mentioning that. So I guess we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap it up with that. Thanks again for emailing and commenting on the socials. And if you have anything else you'd like to ask us or criticize us or talk to us about or whatever you wanted to, just shoot us up on the Gmail or on the Blue Sky. So Jay, where can folks find you?
All right, so if you want to read my columns, I do weekly reviews, and I'm currently working through the 3-boot series. That is at jmlonglivethelegion.blogspot.com. If you want to find me on Blue Sky, I'm at jmckernan.bsky.social. And if you're on Reddit, my username there is Drake Burrows, shock of shocks, considering Wildfire is my favorite Legionnaire. And you can find me there as well. And where can they find you, Jim?
Awesome. So I have my Legion review website at jimboslegion.blogspot.com, where I try to post one new comic a week that's Legion related. And right now I just started doing the Infinitus Saga, which was published in the around 2015 timeframe of the Justice League United comic book. And you can find me personally on Blue Sky at jimbofett.bsky.social. I'm on Reddit at jimbofett87. And I'm on Discord at our Legion Fan Club Discord as Jimbo Fett. I think that wraps it up today. What do we have on deck for the next time?
So next time we're going to talk about creators. What makes a good Legion creator? What are we looking for? Who do we think? We're not going to get into like the Mount Rushmore or whatever, but just what sort of skills, what abilities, what talents are we looking for? And then as well, I think we're going to talk a little bit about like how we'd like to see, creators move forward. But it's one of those things with this, and I don't know if you've noticed, we are fairly fluid because we are changing this. So we might find something in a week and go, no, we want to talk about that. That's way more exciting. So right now that's our plan. And we'll see where it goes, because we've had some great suggestions so far. And we like getting that. The podcast is still a bit of flux, so we want to do what the listeners are going to want to hear.
Awesome. And so with that, I think we will call it a podcast, and see you all next time. So until we talk to you next time, long live the Legion.
Long live the Legion.